Yo, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. I'm Patrick, flying solo. So the Warriors, they beat the Clippers at Chase Center 115-91 and are, for the first time all season, 3 games above 500. Like that's wild. And, they had their second 4-game winning streak of the season. They had a 5-gamer back in January, and since the All-Star break, they're 4-1. They are on a 4-game winning streak, and hey, in this one, they got down again, just like they had against the Wolves and against the Blazers. But then they came roaring back. The third quarter, which has been kind of a hallmark quarter for the Warriors during this dynasty run, seems to be back. And that defensive focus, the defensive scheming, the defensive effort looks like it's there again, at least when they access it. And so, things are looking pretty good. I'm pretty impressed at how they've been, able to come back and really, really just put teams away. I mean, they were down by 11 at halftime, and then they outscored the Clippers 42-16 to take control of this game. And then they smoked them in the fourth quarter as well, 28-19. So they have a back-to-back, a second night of back-to-back on Friday against the Pelicans. And it's quite possible they could go on a 5-game winning streak. I mean, I think they should, getting the Pelicans at home, the Pelicans without Zion. And this Warriors team, this is what we've kind of been waiting for this season. We need to see if it can travel, if they can take it on the road. And that's the greatest test, right? Everybody had always said, like, wait until the Warriors start clicking and watch out. Wait until they get to the postseason. No one wants to face them in a 7-game series. That's always been true. And we spent months of this season waiting for this to happen. And the biggest test, like the biggest exclamation mark on this season, has been how bad they've been on the road. If they can exercise some of those demons, then that's when I think we can say, like, all right, these Warriors are just hitting their stride, peaking at the right time. That on top of the fact that Steph, who said originally, there was chatter about him potentially coming back March 9th against the Grizzlies in Memphis, but he might actually come back sooner, targeting Sunday's game in LA against the Lakers. So getting Steph back with this team able to, find its defensive acumen again, its defensive mojo. I said after the last episode, it's like there's 20 games left in the season. There's 19 now. If you are a veteran and if you've been through playoff runs, and even if, you went through last year's championship run, you can look at 20 games. You could just throw the previous 62 out the window and say, all right, let's do this for 20 games and then get into the postseason and, do what we do, whatever, So that might be what we're seeing. And again, pump the brakes. Not going to be like, all right, we've arrived. But these are definitely positive signs because they're winning games. They haven't put it together beginning to end, but what they've shown us in these comebacks, they've been more and more impressive as these games go on. Now, when they put it together from the beginning of the game to the end, then that's when we'll really, really feel good about it. But first, they got to take the show on the road and take it on the road and win a bunch of road games, in my opinion, to make it feel like it's real. And not being a naysayer, I feel good about what we're seeing out there. The Warriors are a game behind the Suns for fourth place. And, if you look a little further ahead, they are 4 games behind the Kings for third place. Now, that's the wild thing about this season is that teams are not that far separated, even when you look up in the standings. 4 games, however, has felt like a ton throughout this season. It's felt like just like this giant chasm of games in the standings that you can't make up. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes from here. One thing I've thought is that the Warriors are no longer the hunted team, that they're back to being the hunters. We've talked about how since the beginning of the season, as the defending champs, that every team they play, the Warriors have a target on their backs, and how every team is going to give maximum effort and bring their A game to compete with the defending champs and to try to knock them off as a measuring stick for how good they are, or for some of these young teams to show that they can take out the champs. And when the Warriors were basically struggling from the beginning of the season, they looked like a wounded animal, right? The prey. But what we're seeing now, perhaps, is more of that hunter mentality where they're like, okay, we know what we got to do, and let's just do it. Other teams, especially in the West, who are struggling again because all these teams are packed together because they all have their own unique set of consistency problems. There's uncertainty amongst a lot of teams. And now that the Warriors are focused, that they are kind of getting into playoff mode, they look at these other teams and it's like, hey, we may have struggled during the regular season or the rest of the regular season, but we know who we are. A lot of these other teams, especially the young ones, especially the ones that are kind of patchwork together with new guys, they don't necessarily know who they are yet. And I think that's the distinct advantage of this Warriors team, and that championship DNA, championship pedigree, all that stuff. This is definitely promising. But again, let's see them take it on the road. I mean, first and foremost, the goal maybe just a week ago or even a few days ago was, let's get out of the play-in. Let's get into the top 6. They're 5th. And again, in a week, if things go south, then we could be right back into the play-in. But things are trending in the right way. And if we have confidence and faith in these vets, the Hall of Fame core, then maybe it's going to keep moving upwards. But now that they're out of the kind of play-in at this point, it's like, okay, get greedy, win some games, try to climb the standings. I'm sure the guys would love to get ahead of the Suns, right? KD's sons, Chris Paul's sons, Devin Booker's sons, right? That would be an ultimate kind of like, hey, we're back. Can you imagine a 4-5 matchup between the Warriors and the Suns in the first round? That'd be wild. That'd be amazing theater. But again, getting ahead of myself on that one. But it definitely feels like the Warriors are the ones who are looking at other teams and then aggressively coming after them, well, at least in the second halves of these games. Jordan Poole, part of what I like to call the Jordan Poole experience, is the ups and downs of how he can be thrilling at one moment and then frustrating at the next. Like a lot of times it's like, he helps the Warriors come back, but he was a big reason why they got into the hole in the first place. But he was amazing in the third quarter. Overall, 32 minutes, 9 for 20 from the field, 5 for 12 from 3, 11 for 12 from the line, which is big because as one of the handful of guys who can drive to the basket. Sometimes he doesn't get the calls. And this one, he did. So that's a big deal. 4 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals, 34 points, plus 19. I mean, that's solid. And, a lot of people have been down on Jordan Poole because it's fair criticism. It's legitimate criticism, right? Like some of his decision making throughout the season and some of his just shot selection, all of that is still true. And the reason why it's so frustrating is because we've seen him be good. We've seen him be solid. But can he bring that consistency on a night to night basis? Can he get other guys involved? Can he look for the open guy instead of jacking up 26 footers with 20 seconds left on the shot clock? So this is part of the growing process, and we all want to see it. But, the frustration of this season is just like same story, same story, same story. So hopefully, even though he's not a vet in his 30s, hopefully he can see what needs to happen and really, really just tighten up, be smarter. I notice at least he's not doing the thing where he drives to the basket, gets cut off or stuck up in the air and just throws the ball backwards. He doesn't do that too often. So at least that's one thing. We just want him to be smarter and make better decisions. And if he does that, and also he's playing, some better defense. But if he does those things, then like that's what we hope for. That's what we've hoped for since the beginning of the season, right? It's a fact that he hasn't made a leap this year, but hey, there's time. There's time to show that, okay, you can figure something else out, unlock the next level of your development. And we all want that, we all want that, but you got to bring the consistency too. So we'll see. We'll see. Klay Thompson had 11 boards. And I've talked recently about how he's not known for rebounding, but in this next stage of his career, now that he's got his shot back, now that he feels good, that understanding that he needs to do the other things that help this team win, right? I mean, basically with Poole and DiVincenzo starting right now, Klay is small forward. He's playing Wiggins' position, and that position has to get rebounds. And Klay, 30 minutes, 7 for 16, 3 for 8 from 3, hit both his free throws, 11 boards, 4 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, 19 points. And those are the things at this point that Klay needs to do to help this team win. And, you love to see it, right? Because although Klay may not be as quick to guard smaller dudes, he's still a big guy. And he's pretty solid guarding some of these bigger dudes, some of these small forwards around the league. So I'll take that. Donte DiVincenzo didn't shoot that great, only 2 for 10, 1 for 6 from 3, but he also had 11 boards, plus 22, highest plus minus on the night, 5 points. Draymond Green had a beautifully typical Draymond Green game, 29 minutes, 5 for 7, 9 boards, 9 assists, almost a triple double, 11 points plus 19. So I'm not going to go through everybody, but these are the signs that you like to see. And also because it was a blowout, you look at the starters minutes and it's like 29, 25, 30, 31, 32. So they kept the minutes relatively low for some of these guys so that they can come after these Pelicans because they got to get the wins, right? And the beauty is Klay plays back-to-backs. So 30 minutes in this one, he's ready for the Pelicans on Friday. Jonathan Kuminga, 29 minutes, 7 for 12 from the field, 3 for 4 from 3, 2 out of 3 from the line, 7 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, 19 points, plus 19 off the bench, 29 minutes. He had 25, I believe, in the Blazers game previously. And, don't look now, but that guy is getting a lot of minutes on the court. Part of it is because Wiggins is out, but also it's like these are the minutes that Jonathan Kuminga deserves. A really, really solid game. I remember watching his first G League game against the Santa Cruz Warriors during the G League bubble. And that was the game where Jordan Poole went up for a layup and uh, Kuminga came out of nowhere and blocked him in one of the most vicious blocks I've ever seen. But it was in that game where I was like, this guy could be like Kawhi Leonard, right? Because he had the size. At that point, he was just 18. If this guy can put it together, then he'd be really awesome. And that's why when the Warriors had an opportunity to draft him, I was like, take that guy. You know, I know the argument for Wagner, right, at the time, which admittedly I didn't buy, but clearly I was wrong. But just Kuminga, like what he can do. And he'd been a little choppy since the trade deadline. He's had some good games, but then some, games where it was like his impact didn't feel as intense. But he's really, really starting to put it together, and you love the fact that he's hitting his threes, that he's confident in his mid ranger, and I talked about it in the last game. Like once he starts putting those things together, like for real, then watch out, you know? And I've said also he needs to tighten his handle when he drives and everything and the decision making, but those things come with reps, hopefully in the off season, and just getting minutes, getting time out there. So when I see him getting 25 to 30 minutes, I mean, that's huge for him. And his defense, always active. And again, these are all positive signs. There is a part of me though that thinks it's kind of a shame. Like nothing has changed for this team since before the All-Star break, right? It's like, I know the season is a slog. I know the season is weird in some respect, but it's like, where was this team before? And I know it takes a while, but like it seems that the switch, they found it, or at least they can find it in games and then they can flip it. But couldn't they have played a little bit better before now? It's not like they all of a sudden got some guys back or made a trade for anyone who is actually on the court right now. Maybe it's just this feeling of, hey, the gang's all here with Gary Payton II back in the fold on the bench, hanging out with Steph. That's heartwarming. That's great and all. But like this position that they're in, what was it that put them there? I've talked about how like there's a ton of reasons why it's played out this way, but was it that the team just had strange vibes? Was it that the Draymond punching Poole thing threw everyone off? Was it that they just really did have a certain level of indifference and lack of care, lack of focus, all that stuff? I've talked about how the dog days of the season are, basically like January to February. And they definitely went through those last season, but they started the season with an 18-2 record. So was it just more dog days that they couldn't avoid no matter what? And now they're just focusing and ramping up for the playoff run, for a stretch run? It could have been, but I'm just saying, if they could have made this effort a month and a half ago, then we're talking, differently. But they couldn't close out games before. They couldn't find that defensive focus. And that's what they have shown in the last several games. So I'll take that. I'll take that for now. And again, hey, if the Warriors can keep it going, then I said a couple of games ago that don't automatically assume, I'm not going to just jump the gun and say, hey, they're world beaters now and they're the favorites. We always knew that if they could get healthy and get their focus right, that no one wants to see them in any situation in the playoffs. But, just getting there is the first step. But how high can they go? Like, how much can they flex over these final 19 games and be like, whoa, tell the league we're back. That's going to be really, really, really interesting. So right now, the Warriors, they get the Pelicans at home on Friday. Then they go to LA to play the Lakers on Sunday. And that is hopefully when Steph comes back. Then they go to OKC. Then they go to Memphis. And then they get Milwaukee and Phoenix at home. And those are all, decent teams. So we'll see. We'll see how they can go in this next stretch of games. This is what we wanted from this team. This is what we have hoped for from this team. But again, let's see how it plays out game to game. Take it one at a time. All right, that's all I got.